You know, right now we're in sort of a platformer renaissance, and you know what? I, for one, am here for it. Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon, Psychonauts, the newly announced Balan Wonderworld. I'm sorry, Ballin' Wonderworld. I'm sorry I had to. This resurgence can really be attributed to the Crash and Spyro remakes that came out recently. The Insane Trilogy and Reignited Trilogy really got us in that nostalgia for the genre of jumpin'. And now we're even starting to get new entries in these respective franchises, with Crash 4 It's About Time coming in just a few months. I'm just so happy. The Crash and Spyro remakes were so exciting, but were more expected, I guess, to be chosen for the remake treatment. They're well-known characters that have prevailed past their original PS1 entries, for better or worse. So, when out of nowhere last summer, THQ Nordic announced a remake of 2003's SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom, it was welcome but entirely unexpected. A report had come out a few months earlier saying that THQ Nordic had acquired the licenses to a bunch of Nickelodeon shows, including past titles published by THQ proper. I just assumed we'd be getting like HD remasters, never in my dreams did I expect a full-blown remake. Outside looking in, yeah, it seems a bit weird. A licensed SpongeBob game deserves a full remake, but so-and-so other game from my childhood deserves a remake more. Hashtag Neopets Darkest Fairy Remake 2020, let's make it happen, folks. But let me stop you right there. Battle for Bikini Bottom was great. Sure, basic gameplay loop-wise, it was your typical collectathon platformer, sticking to the model Super Mario 64 established. But it did it so well with a variety of colorful locations and really being the first game to really capture the feeling of SpongeBob's characters and world. After the disappointment that was the Revenge of the Flying Dutchman, Battle was such a breath of fresh air, and is really a prime example on how to make a good licensed game. Now, lo and behold, it was real. This past June, we finally got SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated. So I've already produced a video covering the original, so today we're going to be talking about what's new and different in the remake. I own 2 copies of the game, don't judge me. So yeah, a remake. Still can't believe it, really. I carried a torch for Battle for Bikini Bottom ever since it originally came out, trumpeting it as an underrated gem of the 6th generation of consoles. Thankfully, though, I wasn't the only one, as general fan sentiment kept the game in the conversation thanks to nostalgia along with a prominent speedrunning community. It's important to note that I'll be talking about my first playthrough of the game on PS4 with the Day 1 patch. The PS4 version functioned well enough, though a new patch has recently been released, purporting to fix stability issues and general glitches. So, Rehydrated is a from-the-ground-up remake of the 2003 original, not a remaster. I see these words used interchangeably online and it bugs me. This isn't just the game up-res to HD. This is a remake similar to the Insane and Reignited trilogies. It's the same game, but with all new visual assets to look more in line with modern games. Though, in Rehydrated's case, the audio experience is the same, though now uncompressed. And yes, that means OG, weird Mr. Krabs and Mermaid Man voices. Joy.
This flapping robot crisis is making the Krusty Krab lose money like a sinking ship.
So, first impressions. Rehydrated is striking. The color palette is so vibrant and saturated it's almost too much, but the color really and truly pops here and I love it. The game's a joy to look at, with developer Purple Lamp Studios really bringing it on the visuals front. There's definitely some texture pop in, especially when you enter a new location, but it's not a big deal. Definitely noticeable, but not a big deal. Also, Patrick's teeth. They just disturb me.
Used to be Alakazama Alabala Wiesna Tikitana Fushbar Griddle Bits von Vidish.
Why? Rehydrated is definitely a faithful remake of Battle for Bikini Bottom, keeping the same levels, objectives, and controls to an extent intact. Really, everything controls practically the same. SpongeBob can tiptoe, jump, bubble wand attack, headbutt, bowl, shoot a missile. It's all here and all the same. Same goes for Patrick and Sandy. Sorta. Sandy, my favorite character to play as, still does her gliding, lasso, and swinging thing, but her swinging just feels off now to me. Her momentum is ridiculous and feels a little stiff to control, along with now having to hold down the swinging button while hooked to her iconic Texas symbols instead of how it was in the original, with just hooking on by tapping the button and then jumping to move on to the next. It just feels off and a bit disappointing. On the other hand, though, she can now lasso enemies while in the air, so it kinda makes up for it. I just miss the old swinging, though. I really can't stress how refreshing it is to see these classic characters and levels newly rendered in such gorgeous HD. The original had a more washed out color palette reflecting the original look of the TV show, so the more vibrant look here is more in line with how the show looks nowadays. Doesn't bother me, it's just gorgeous. I'll take either style, really. It all feels really good to play. Again, for the most part. There's some funky physics going on here. Like in the first level, Jellyfish Fields, there's this long rock seesawing around that you have to cross to continue. Pretty straightforward in the original. However, in Rehydrated, you can't really get off the ground, so SpongeBob here just kinda hops in place. Ugh, it's really frustrating trying to manage. You'll get across by luck mostly. Hopefully a patch could fix this. On post-launch patches, I'm all for them, of course, but I wish the game didn't need so many updates to get to the point where it worked flawlessly. There are other little gameplay oddities that pop up too. Most egregiously, some players not even being able to fully complete the game, as some golden spatulas, the main collectible, don't even spawn. It really makes me feel like the game needed a delay before releasing to the public. Again, patches are good, but at launch, the game felt unpolished.
A note from Mr. Krabs! And it even smells sweaty, just like him.
Honestly, like a 3-month delay wouldn't have been a bad idea in my opinion. So there are quality of life improvements as the controls, say for Sandy's funky swing, feel much tighter and easy to use. A good example is the sliding, most prevalent at my favorite level in the game, Sand Mountain. The original game worked fine, but there were definitely instances where some tighter turning would have made some sections a bit less frustrating. This is fixed in Rehydrated with all the characters controlling with ease, though the trade-off is this funky mist that's prevalent as you go down the game's 3 mountains. Really annoying, especially with the original not having anything like this at all. It actually makes me like the level less in the remake than in the original, which is a disappointment. Still fun to go down, but finding those 8 sandmen becomes a bit more of a chore with the lack of a decent draw distance. Back on the positive side of things, the animation. These characters just have so much more life to them this go around. In typical talking scenes in the original game, SpongeBob just kinda defaulted to this one position the whole time. Fine, but could be better. Now in Rehydrated though, he and everyone else has such a wider range of motion, it just really brings the cartoon to life all the better. It's a real treat. Also, meme faces. I mean, I think it's charming. There's actually a fair amount of memes included, even in the environments. Maybe some might find them annoying, but it's cute. The bosses have actually been updated too. Some for the better, some for the worst. Kind of a consistent trend with these changes. In general, all of the boss battles against the big robots have been sped up quite dramatically, with attacks coming faster to keep the fights moving. I'd say that works well for the Patrick robot fight, as in the original his spinning twirl went on for far too long. So yep, good change. However, the Sandy boss fight just feels weird. Her attacks are sped up along with the arena environment being pretty shrunken down. It loses the more dramatic feel of being dwarfed by this hulking mechanism, with the faster attacks getting rid of any sense of intimidation. It's a change I think for the worst. The fight just feels fast and forgettable now. That's kind of just how Rehydrated works. Changes for the better, changes for the worse. It's a mixed bag, and while it's still the game I loved as a kid, I can't help feeling disappointed with how parts of the end product turned out. Also, they ruined the iconic Mrs. Puff's Don't Ask Questions scene.
Don't ask questions you aren't prepared to handle the answer to.
How could you? The most exciting prospect for me when it came to Rehydrated was the reported additions of cut content. See, the original battle for Bikini Bottom was going to include a robot Squidward boss fight along with a MuscleBob Buff Pants robot fight. Patrick's dream section was going to be a full, colorful environment too, not just a one-off joke, which admittedly worked extremely well in the original game. But again, the remake makes it worse. Instead of the funny reveal of Patrick standing in a void where you could run away endlessly and still end up being back where you started, Rehydrated starts the scene with SpongeBob already talking to Patrick to get the golden spatula, ruining any kind of possible reveal. Also, now there's just invisible walls preventing you from running away. Tangent, sorry. Back to the cut content. So the implication, or at least what seemed to be believed, was that Purple Lamp would be adding in these missing levels and boss fights back into the main game. We didn't know how, but I was excited. We were also going to get an all-new multiplayer horde mode with extra characters. Unnecessary in my opinion, but still cool. And then I played the multiplayer mode. It's bad, guys. It's really bad. And also where all of the alleged cut content was thrown in. Yep, not in the actual main game. Robo Squidward is here just to wave his arms around dramatically and do nothing else, while things like MuscleBob and Patrick's Dream are just used as platforms you traverse across. I mean, it starts off promising with multiple playable characters, including new ones like Squidward, Gary, Mr. Krabs, and Roboplankton. But it's just fighting wave after wave of enemies. Then, after you beat it, it just throws you out back to the main menu as a reward. It's bad, and it really should have just been left out in my honest opinion. It's fun getting to play as different characters for about 30 seconds, sure, but the novelty wears off almost immediately and is just traded in for monotony. And Squidward's clarinet. I can still hear it even now. If I'm sounding overly negative, I apologize. I still really enjoyed my time with SpongeBob Rehydrated, and I can easily recommend it to any fan of platformers. It's just a tough act to follow when the original game is so beloved and some changes are made that make the experience worse. The core gameplay experience is still an absolute delight. It's always satisfying to collect the golden spatulas, and searching around for Patrick's missing socks made thorough exploration as all the playable characters absolutely worth it. There's a lot that can be improved, sure, like loading times when you die, but it's nothing really that disruptive. If I'm being honest, I'm probably more likely to revisit the original game rather than Rehydrated. It's a worthy remake for sure, just a flawed one. The original has its own flaws, mind you, but Rehydrated doesn't do much to improve upon them. Except, thankfully, Kelp Forest. At the very least, I can actually see what the heck I'm doing in Kelp Forest finally. Ooh, that was always a nightmare. And the Kelp Slide, ooh, it's finally actually playable. Oh, thank goodness. So in the end, Rehydrated's a mixed bag. The core game is still great. There are just little things here and there that can hopefully be fixed with time. We'll just have to wait and see. Now, anyway, let's head to Sandy's treehouse. Gotta end on something sweet. Ah. Perfection.
プランクトン、問題を起こさないでよ。バカな、力になりたいだけだ。お前たちを潰して俺様が権力を握るためにな。何か言った？いや、向こうのレーザーが見えるか？なんかおしゃれな洗濯機みたいなやつ？お前の小さな脳みそにはそう